Yeah, good to see you. How's everything going on your end?
Oh, can't believe it's March, spring. It's a beautiful day here in Pittsburgh. I think it's 60 degrees. I'm sure it's awesome in Houston right now. Can't wait to get outside and walk around.
Rainy today.
So we're having different weather. So again, different weather patterns, different situations. But there's not ever a sunny day in Pittsburgh. But our guest today is going to make it sunny for Keith, and that again is our sales engineer, Bryce Capodici. And Bryce, thanks for stopping by. What's your perspective? And you're going to talk about workflows, which we've showed the entire demo. We've shown certain things, but workflows, I really want to delve deeper into that. So thanks for stopping by, Bryce.
Sure, it's a pleasure to be here.
Bryce, when you talk about workflows, define workflows, because again, I never even knew what workflows were in real business till I came to Lensec. Now I understand workflows and the terminology, but kind of define that terminology in our software.
Sure. So for a Lensec perspective VMS, the workflow really is a way of automating processes within our software. It uses the if this then that logic. So you have a trigger and then you have corresponding actions to that trigger. So it's a great feature within Perspective, built in, comes standard for, I believe, enterprise level and professional level. Keith, you can verify that for me, but I think that's correct.
I think we're right on that. I think it's definitely enterprise and I believe professional is right. I'll double check.
Yeah, of editions of Perspective, but yeah, it's a built-in feature, and it's just a powerful workhorse to automate processes within Perspective that allows you to spend your time as a user or an operator to handle or manage other aspects of video management.
And what is great is that it can be configured for that particular customer. Kind of explain that, Bryce.
Yeah, so there are different triggers, and these triggers and the actions are basically canned inputs. You're not given the luxury of having your wildest dreams and create code, but using the features that we have within the workflows, you can configure different triggers to provide different outputs depending on what you need to accomplish. A couple examples might be, a certain event takes place on camera during the weekend or out of office hours. And you want to make sure that archive video records the incident perfectly. So maybe you might bump up the resolution or the frame rate of that particular camera during that event, so that you make sure that you capture that event and able then to extract it. You could even set up a workflow to make an automatic extraction. So when you come into work that Monday morning, it's all there waiting for you in an extraction with an email notification, and you have nice footage of that event. Maybe it was a theft of a facility or a break-in and something of that nature. So it does a lot of work for you when you don't have to have somebody sitting there monitoring the system 24/7.
Bryce, you're testing my product knowledge, throwing questions at me like that. We only have, I think we're somewhere between 700 and 1,000 features on PVMS. So
yes,
but yes, we do.
There's a lot of stuff you can configure, Bryce, out of 700 features.
Yeah. Workflows is available in Enterprise and Professional Edition, included with the cost of the software. So
right.
Yeah, a lot of features to kick in and try to automate. How many of those have you done? Have you done half of them yet?
Well, there are a lot. So, but I love playing around with workflows. They're a lot of fun, and really, your imagination is the limit. Sky is the limit. You can do a lot of different things, and I see this as a feature that is definitely underutilized out there in the real world. Maybe our customers aren't aware of these workflow features or what they can possibly do, or possibly they may not even be trained on them. So we're actually incorporating this into our online certification courses, just to make sure that our partners are aware of them, so they can train their customers, or at least mention it to them, so the end users can come to us and we could train them. So, if you ever have a question and you want to learn more about this, obviously look up our online training, join our certification course, or just reach out to Lensec support or support@lensec.com, and we'll guide you to the right person to help you set up that workflow for you.
The way I like to explain this, the concept of a workflow, I mean, many different kinds of softwares have workflow enabled, but the way it's most commonly explained is if this, then that logic. What does that mean for you, Bryce?
So it's basically taking a trigger, something happens. Maybe it's a camera event, access control, or an analytic. That is the trigger mechanism. So then you need an action that triggers off that event. The action could be anything. It could be changing the resolution of a camera, moving a PTZ camera to capture a certain event. It could be forcing an extraction or email notification or an audible alarm. That's the action. There are many others, and I'll briefly go over a couple when we get into the small demonstration of a couple workflows I have planned for you.
Is that
But
is that one trigger, one action?
You can set up many triggers and many actions. Typically, you want to have one trigger, one action, or one trigger and several actions. And what that means is, let's say a motion event happens. That's the one trigger. You can then have email notification. That's one action. You can have an audible alarm. That's the second action. You can have an extraction made. That's the third action. So you can have multiple actions off of one trigger or multiple triggers that create one action. So the multiple triggers would mean any one of those triggers would trigger the action. So if the trigger would be a motion event or the trigger would be access, a valid access on a door, that could be one of the triggers. So it's not each of those triggers have to be met. It could be one. So I think it's the or logic.
Right.
So
exactly.
any one of those triggers would set off the action.
So see, this is really interesting. I think this is because you think about specifically enough coming up with these different triggers in different situations, and it depends on the vertical market for sure. But I know you have plans for us, so we're not going to just, hey, Bryce, hit us with a workflow. You have a couple workflows that you want to show us today. So what is the first one you want to show us?
All right, so let me share my screen. It's best if I can provide you with visual demonstration rather than just talking through. So you'd have to have administrator rights to be able to configure a workflow. To save time, I've configured 3 that I can show you. The first one I'm going to show you would be creating an audible alert for motion detection. Now, what this is intended for, it's not intended for all cameras. Maybe this might be a camera that is reserved for a special room, maybe a bank vault or someplace where you're not expecting a lot of motion.
Or somewhere like healthcare, like where there is a specific that only certain people go at certain times a day for certain medications in the hospital, or something of sorts of like a machine that only should be monitored at certain times of the day.
Yeah, exactly. It could be the camera itself could be focused on a medicine cabinet that is only accessed a few times a day. So the guard watching the cameras, if he's not paying attention, he'll get that audible alert, which will force him to look at the screen to see what's going on. So it's a great tool for the guards, especially when they have hundreds of cameras to view. These guard tour walls that are just immense with lots of video. It's easy to lose track of what camera you might be paying attention to. So the audible alarm will at least get the guard's attention or somebody who's monitoring to be able to focus on the screen. Now, if you have hundreds of video on the wall, you're going to have some other detection method to figure out what camera you need to be focused on. And you can have a pop-up, which I'll show that as well. Or even have a interface change. The camera that is in question will actually pop up on your screen to give you full access to that camera, so you know exactly what's going on. But I'll get to that in a second. But this particular workflow is just to create an audible alert for motion detection. I'm not going to go into all the details that are required to create this. We do have online help tools, and you can always reach out to support@lensec.com to get help in configuring these. But you want to create a name and a short description so it's easy to follow, and you want to enable the workflow. Now we get into the fun part. So I've already configured these, and I'll briefly go over kind of what we're looking for when you're creating this camera event. And again, this is on a camera event. It's the camera's looking for motion. The camera must be set up for motion detection, or we can have server-side motion detection. So we look for a camera event here, and then we assign a particular camera. In this case, it is our Three Rivers office camera. And then the camera event will trigger off the motion alarm. And then again, this is pre-configured on the camera itself. This is an edge device that allows that motion detection. We have different event status that you could trigger. It could be either the start of the motion alarm or the end of it, or both. In this case, I just selected the start. That's all I really care about. Once you have the tables configured, you would click update, and then that would bring the information down into the types table down below. Now we're ready to create an action. But as Keith had asked me earlier, can you have several triggers? You could. All you need to do is then create a new type. So I won't go into details here, but you could have different types of triggers to choose from within this menu, coming from action button all the way down to a virtual input.
So
Okay.
you're a
More or
sales
less, the trigger is more or less where it starts, right? I mean,
That is correct. I am choosing how this workflow is triggered based on these types of trigger mechanisms. Okay.
You're, again, a sales engineer. So could an average person like myself that's not as knowledgeable, meaning as technical as you are, create workflows when using support to kind of figure it out?
I believe so. It's, the great thing about Perspective, that it is a pretty intuitive interface. Now, you don't need to be a rocket scientist to figure this stuff out. There are some areas that are maybe a little more advanced that with someone just showing you how to set these up, you would catch on. And it does take some time to play around to really get, to capture the nuances of how the software works or even the workflows. But this is pretty straightforward. I recommend playing around with it and experimenting with the different configurations, but it is straightforward to answer your question, Neil. Okay. So now that we have the trigger created, now we want to create the actions. So again, we want an audible alarm in this case. I'm going to populate the field. So again, from the action menu, these are the possible actions this workflow can create. I've selected audible. Now, I don't want to spam everyone on the system in this case because this is a test scenario that I'm providing to you. So I just added the audible alarm for myself. So now everyone on Perspective will have to listen to this alarm. Right now, we only have one audio type WAV file, which is the Windows ding. I'm hoping that in the future, we'll be able to provide different WAV files, but for now, ding is our only option. You can then choose the repetitiveness of that ding. In this case, I went with 2. So you'll get a ding, ding, whenever this alarm sounds. Okay. And again, you could have multiple types of actions by selecting another action in this place, configuring that window, clicking add, and then have 2 types or more down here at the bottom. So now we've configured our trigger and our action. We need to set the conditions. You could create a schedule for this if you have a pre-configured schedule like we do here on our demo. If not, you could create one from this interface. But for the most part, you really want to have most of your triggers or your workflow set to always so that they're always active. But that may not always be the case. Maybe you want a trigger or a workflow to trigger off hours or on the weekends, something to that nature. All right, so we have the schedule and then the settings. So this is a pretty cool field here. And for one, I checked this box to allow me to test my workflow because I don't want to wait for the event to possibly occur and find out that the workflow is not working. I can force the workflow to work just to make sure that all my settings are correct. Now, in some cases here, I have it set to 0, but in some cases, you might want to have a delay in between actual workflows. So having a 0 here just means that if this is triggered, the workflow will kick off immediately. If I put in a 5 there, it's 5 seconds. So once this workflow is triggered, it will wait an additional 5 seconds before this workflow can trigger again. This is useful in cases where you might have a door. If the door is left open too long, you might trigger a workflow to set an alarm or a notification. So if the door takes 4 seconds to shut, you might want to give it a little buffer before the next workflow alert or notification can be sounded. So, but in this case, it doesn't matter. So I like to have the notification set off immediately. All right, so now that I have this set up, I want to confirm I've enabled this. Now, I don't have an easy way to have this workflow kick off manually or automatically. So I'm going to force it by running this on demand. So I'll show you what this does. So when I have it set to run on demand or run for test, you'll see this little icon appear here. I know that the workflow is now active because the check mark is in the enabled column. I'm going to simulate this motion detection and you'll hear a ding, 2 dings. All right, did you guys hear that?
That'll keep us from having to send Mark running for the back office to test.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool. And I hope you could see that it was fairly easy to set up, pretty intuitive. Again, it might take for the brand new user to play around with the different choices you have and configurations, but it is really simple. You can have a workflow set up within a minute or 2, honestly,
Well, some things in Facebook are as complex as this, Bryce. So
So I have two more that I'd like to show you that I thought were pretty cool. So, and again, these are workflows that I see that are used out in the real world, or questions that I get from partners and end users on whether workflows can accommodate this. The other one here is video of an access control event. And this is very interesting. And I see this coming from a lot of our integrators who work heavy with access control. They want to know if when a door is accessed, would there be a video that will allow the monitor or the operator to kind of catch their attention that somebody's walking through the door. And of course, we have this capability. Obviously, you need to have access control and a camera that's associated with that device. So I'm going to enable this workflow now and walk you through the triggers, or walk you through the configuration. So in this particular case, I'm using access control. So I need to trigger on the device. So I have this device event. And then I have the different, oh, by the way, so in our case here for the office, I'm triggering off the main office entrance. So that means if someone swipes their card on the main office, enter the building, enter our office at least, this will trigger. But I've also set up other types of triggers. And this comes from the access control device. So if the door is forced open, if the door is unlocked, or there's valid access or invalid access, all these inputs will trigger this workflow. You can also set up control lists, which I don't have in this case, but you can have, this is great for like license plate recognition. You could set up control lists of whether vehicles are allowed in or not allowed in. So it's a great feature to set up as well. But once we have the trigger configured, we're going to then create the interface. So in this case, what you want is, I want that camera view to pop up on my screen just for a few seconds, just so that I can see who's coming through the door and making sure that the person who has the access or the card they're using is that person. Okay. So you from the drop-down menu from the types, I chose user interface, and you could set any group or user within perspective. Again, here, I don't want to spam everyone on the system. So I'm using only myself as the person to be notified, but you could set up groups to be notified, or specific users, and you could have multiple users at a time as well. All right, so from the drop-down list, you could choose or start typing in what group that you want. So you navigate. We're going to use, I want this camera I want the camera viewer to be the interface change. So I'm going to choose camera viewer, and I'm going to choose static view. And then the select switch camera is the link that allows me to choose the camera that I want for this situation, okay, for this event. And then I select my time.
right.
So this is a 3-second time. So the video will pop up on my screen. Whatever I'm looking at, the video will force itself upon my view for 3 seconds, and then I'll go back to the original view that I had. All right. I can also set it up where I'll prompt the user, so I can choose whether I want to see that video notification if I want. But in this case, for 3 seconds, I will allow it to invade what I'm watching, just so I can see who's coming into the door. All right. I will click update. And again, as discussed, your schedule will be always, in this case, 0 delay. And I'm going to allow this workflow to run on demand. All right. So again, I'm going to simulate this because I don't have an easy way right now. Because of COVID, we don't have a lot of people in the office. So I'm going to simulate this workflow. I should see the camera pop up on my screen, and it should disappear in 3 seconds.
That's just a great way to test that feature.
Yes, correct. So it looks like we saw Mark running out of the office. So we actually did have somebody there. But if he does use his access card to come back in.
And doing it at the same time, there's 2 marks. Oh my gosh.
Could be.
Now we're noticing a lot of pop-ups down in the right hand of your screen there. I'm assuming you're getting to that, right?
Well, this is a workflow. I don't actually have it set up to talk about and to test, but this is a great workflow, kind of in line with what I was just showing you. Some people do like to see, instead of my interface changing, they have a little pop-up. Now, the pop-up is a little more complicated because it uses a specific camera or uses a camera input to create the pop-up. In this case, I was creating the workflow from the access control device.
Right.
So if I was starting from the motion of a camera, then a pop-up can be created. And you can actually, and that's a great point, Keith, if by adding a second trigger, I could then add a camera for that motion event and then get that pop-up, because some people would prefer the pop-up. It's less intrusive. It doesn't change my interface at all. And that'd be a great start. So I would just choose camera event, find the camera, and then I would get the pop-up. I would have to change my action and create a pop-up. And again, I would only notify myself in this case. But very good point.
And you're also seeing another little pop-up that occurs there, a little identifier of the type of event. Like I think we just saw behavior pop up, and that looked like it was based off of a license plate camera. Is that right?
That is correct. Now that's not actually affiliated with a workflow. That is a setting in my personal settings that everyone can update. Off topic here is oops.
Right.
Let me change this. It is in your user profile. You can configure right here, pop-up event notification. So it's not really a workflow, but yeah, it's just another form of notification.
That's a newer feature though that we've added.
That is correct. It's brand new. I would say it came out with PVMS version 4.3, I believe is when it came out. Yeah.
But that's independent of a workflow.
That's correct. Yeah, it has nothing to do with workflow.
That's good. Because Bryce is the engineer. Why is it not considered a workflow versus it's more of a notification? What's missing to make it a workflow?
It's not configured in the workflows. It's basically a system notification, much like you would get when you open the side panel here. You get different notification setups. Those aren't technically workflows.
But a workflow has to have a couple things in it, and that's only really just a notification because it's one step.
Right.
Someone
yeah.
triggers an action, and that's it. A workflow is 3 steps, right, or more.
Basically, yeah. Workflow is taking a trigger of some kind and making it into some sort of actionable event at that point. So you have a trigger. It could be in that case where you saw the behavior license plate reader.
Trigger, like if we saw someone go through the gate, so it's a pop-up, that's one thing. But action trigger email, action trigger alarm, that's a workflow.
That is correct. And actually, it's a great segue to the next workflow I have. So I have an email configured to automate some of the reporting that it's done. Now, Perspective does have its own set of reports that it will automatically email you in the event that there is an issue. But there are reports that can be run on demand that if you want to see or set up a workflow that will automate those reports for you, generate them, and then email them to you at a specific time. And I actually find this quite useful in the field. I have a lot of end users who want this set up so they can maybe have this prepared for a meeting they have at the end of the week or just for general maintenance of their system. Well, let me walk through that real quick and I'll demonstrate how I get the email. So within Perspective, we have a couple of reports that you can run on demand, and these are the reports here. Let me quickly jump to those reports to show you. These reports right here.
Okay.
I'm sorry. These are the reports right here. So these are a couple of reports that you could create on demand. The workflow will actually generate 2 more that's not in this list.
Okay.
All right. So I want these reports generated automatically. I want to receive an email of these reports every Friday at 3 p.m. Those are my requirements.
All those reports. So that's like a multiple workflow because one scenario is leading to multiple other steps. So that's like almost a multi-step workflow.
In a way, yes. I'm creating several outputs, putting into one email. So yeah, I'm taking one trigger, which is a date. I'm creating an output that's creating, what do we have here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 reports and place them all into one email.
Camera out of service, server status, camera status, archive status, and acknowledged responses are the reports that you're generating off of one trigger.
Wow.
That's correct. Correct. Yep. So this is very easy to set up. So we want this, we know we want this to send. And again, I'm choosing at a specific time from my trigger types. I'm creating a schedule. I randomly chose today and randomly chose an end of when this workflow will stop working. I can make it much further in the future by making it 2099. But either way, you create the schedule. So right here, I have 3 p.m. only on Fridays. How do I do that? I have this interface down here. I can custom create the schedule, or I could just use what's by default provided within these different tabs here. But because I want this at 3 p.m. specifically, I'm going to custom create the schedule. I would click this radio button here and select the 00. And then the hour, I know I need this at 3 o'clock, so 1500 hours. Make sure I select the specific hour. And then on the day, select the specific day radio and click on Friday. So now that I have the schedule, this will update automatically depending on my configuration down here.
Right.
I don't need to select a month because I want this to happen on every Friday. I don't care about the month. So I'll leave that as default every month. All right, now that I have this set up, click update and it would appear down here and then types. So now let's create the action. I want an email notification of these different reports. So I would select my email notification type. Again, I don't want to spam everyone on Perspective right now. So right now, this is only going to myself. I can add additional recipients here if I wish. Set my importance so that when I get this email, I could maybe set it to high or low or medium. Add a subject just like you would an email and a body. And then the report types will be located here. You can pick 1, 2, or all of them. Choose which ones you like. In this case, I have all reports selected. And I want this in a PDF file format. You can also choose Excel, but I prefer to read these reports in PDF format. Once I have that selected, I can click update. Now I want you to notice there are other items here that don't pertain to this particular workflow, but if I ever wanted to get an email notification of a motion alert of a camera, I can add a snapshot of that camera that captures that motion event along with a link to the archive video. So this is also great in setting up email notification of motion detected events. All right, but different from this case, so I'm going to ignore this section for now. All right, again, schedule always. I'm going to allow this to run on demand. And I will run this. And then I'm going to switch over to my email. I should see an email notification appear shortly. There it is right there. So each of these reports are added as attachments to the email. So this is great. And again, in reviewing your system at the end of the week, or maybe you're preparing for a meeting and you need to have these reports to show your stakeholders or for whatever reason, but this is a great tool to use. I actually have this installed in a lot of end users. This is a very popular one to set up.
This report specifically, the camera out of service report, was initially created as an idea from a customer. It was I think a police department that had an officer or a staff person assigned to come in every morning and spend their time, I don't know how long it was, let's say 3 hours, cycling through each of the cameras to verify that they were working. And now that that officer has an automated report that lands in his email inbox to show him what's working and what's not. And now with workflows and with a status report that's delivered automatically, he gets 3 hours of his day back to do actual police work rather than administrative work on a security system. So that's a real gained benefit.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's a real world scenario right there, isn't it?
Yeah, and again, the workflows are automated processes meant to save you time.
Yeah, there's another scenario that I think is key. We have a facility in a country overseas that has a very secure nature, and so they have a high level of perimeter protection,
right?
Including an under vehicle surveillance system that we have that we have an integration with. So what happens when a vehicle pulls up to the security gate is they pull up onto a under vehicle surveillance system that scans the bottom of their car, references it and compares it with a database picture of what the car should look like, and notices if there's any changes. Now, let's say the vehicle is denied. It doesn't pass the database check. What happens? Well, they use workflows to create a detection of the change in the vehicle status, indicating a possible incident. So
Right.
additional actions occur. The UVSS system alerts security personnel of the vehicle abnormality. The security arm barrier closes, preventing the vehicle from moving. The road blockers are raised, trapping the vehicle in place. A PVMS incident is logged, triggering immediate automated workflow events. Security personnel in the security operations center are notified of the activity, and everything goes on high alert. So, I mean, all of this is happening in PVMS with integrated third-party technology partners that are partnering together to create a unified security platform.
Right. Exactly. Very powerful tool.
Very cool.
Wow, Bryce, this is just great information, and I'll have Keith go ahead and summarize workflows as we usually do our summary as we're closing up today. Because Bryce has done his all the work.
This, then that.
That was the greatest.
We talk a lot about workflows, and I know that you hear workflows a lot in today's jargon. It seems to be one of those buzzwords that happens. But boy, we've found a lot of power in Perspective VMS through workflows. And so if you have questions about whether or not we can do it, call us. If you can imagine it, we might be able to do it. And Bryce is smart enough to figure it out. So we'll have you call Bryce.
Yeah, and we do have we're updating our online documentation so that, you know, you could always start there. There's a lot more involved with the workflows as far as different triggers and the different actions that I could have time to go over. But if you want, you could always click on the question mark here for the help files, and this will bring you to our online help manual basically. And I went ahead and typed in a workflow at the search filter here to kind of bring up some information for you. But if you're interested in learning more about the workflows and maybe if you're more independent before you want to ask for help, this kind of goes into a little description of some of or maybe most of these different triggers and actions to some degree. Again, nothing beats you playing around with it and trying to figure out how all these work together. But we do have some resources available.
Schedule a demo with us. Any one of us would be happy to do a demo.
Definitely.
And show you how these workflows work. You can schedule a demo with anybody at Lensec, and we'll be happy to walk you through it and give you the 411 on how workflows can help to improve your unified security platform.
Right.
Exactly. And then guys, go to lensec.com/sales and you can schedule a demo today right there, lensec.com/sales. Depending on what region you're in, we'll get back to you ASAP and get on a demo with you, a virtual demo. So I appreciate it, Bryce. Best place to connect with you, Bryce, is go where?
You could find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on, I believe, well, if you contact support@lensec.com and you need to get hold of me, they will route you to me, or you can use my email at bcapodc@lensec.com.
Excellent. All right. Well, Bryson, it was a great What's Your Perspective. Go to lensec.com/live to catch up to all the live episodes, and also follow us on all different social media platforms. And if you're watching this video now, like it and share it to people who really could utilize this technology to learn more about PVMS. So I appreciate you guys and take care. That was What's Your Perspective. Have a great day.
Bye.
Thank you.